What's up, everybody? Welcome back. Today we're going to be tackling this very grimy, very gross gas stove top. We're going to be cleaning it without harsh chemicals. This is almost 2 weeks in the making. Normally I clean our stove on Saturdays, but in anticipation of making this video, which I thought I was going to do much earlier in the week, I continued to let it go so it's extra grimy, extra crusty, extra sticky, but we're gonna get it clean today. So the things that we're gonna be using, I have a sink full of hot soapy water here. I have my gloves. I have a jar. I'm gonna be making a paste out of apple cider vinegar and baking soda. You can use regular vinegar. I just don't have regular vinegar. I do have apple cider. So I'm gonna use that. This is a cleaning spray, a homemade cleaning spray, and this scouring stick, and I'll show you what we're going to use that for. Okay, let's get started. So first is these grates, these pesky little grates here that have some grime and buildup on them, but that's what we're going to use the scouring stick for. So we're going to move these grates over to the hot soapy water. My sink is very small, so I'm not able to fully submerge them in there. We'll just stick it in there. And unfortunately, the other side of my sink is still full of dishes, so I can't fit it in there right now. This is real life, friends. So right at this point, the baby woke up early from his nap. He was not happy. There was a lot of crying in the background, so I'm going to switch over to voiceover mode now. So the first thing that I did with these grates is just scrub them down with my scrubber. I use a Euro scrubber, or you can use a regular sponge. And then on the metal, there can be these little areas that look like they're just kind of stained on there. It looks like it's stained on the metal. And that is what I use the scouring stick for. So it's pumice, and for some reason it just works really, really well to remove buildup from lots of different things. And this is no exception. So you can see here, there's just kind of some grime in different areas. And then after scrubbing it with the regular sponge first and then going over it with the scouring stick, it looks a whole lot better at the end. I don't know. I guess the buildup is probably oils, and so it doesn't scrub off really easily, but when you use the scouring stick, it just comes off really nicely and looks like it was never there. So the next thing that I do is make a paste out of baking soda and apple cider vinegar. Sometimes I add too much of one or the other, so I kind of just keep mixing until I get the right consistency where it's a kind of liquidy paste that can be easily stirred and then easily spread out. And then I take all of these different parts, drawing a blank on what they're called. Forgive me, but I take all those parts and I put them in the hot soapy water to let them soak while I work on the rest of this. So I like to vacuum the big loose chunks off of the stovetop, because I've found that if I try to sweep them out with my hands, they get stuck on the edge and then they fall into the little crevices, and I just don't like that. So I vacuum it off. And then I just use hot soapy water and go over each section with a regular sponge and then dry it off with a white clean towel. And then this gives me a really good idea of what's left on there. And you can see that there's that kind of oily stain right there that didn't come off with regular scrubbing. And so I put the paste on it. And then anywhere else that I see that, I add the paste, and then I can go back through with the little sponge again. And then once it's all off of there, wipe it up with a clean, wet sponge and then dry it off. And it really does work really well. It's abrasive enough to get oils off, but without scratching. And it does come up and just makes it look a whole lot nicer. So I continue on. I do that with the other sections of the stove. I like to do it in sections so it's less overwhelming. And then you can see these little bubbles there that almost looks like it is the coating on the metal bubbling maybe. The first time I ever saw that on one of these stoves, I thought, oh no, it was too hot or it ruined something. But it doesn't. You go through with that abrasive mixture, and it can sometimes take a couple of times to get it all off of there. But once you do, it's nice and smooth and those bubbles are gone. And then it just really looks a lot better. So I continue on with the rest of the stove in the same way, stopping to add paste anywhere where there's something that is more stubborn. And then once I get it all cleaned off with the wet sponge, I go back over it with the dry wet towel. That's a good one. With a clean, dry towel is what I was meaning to say. So I just give it a once over with that and make sure that there's not any areas that I missed. And look at it, it's so shiny. I can see my reflection in it. It's wonderful. And then I go and work on these little pieces that, again, I still cannot think of the name. I guess I could have stopped and looked that up, but that's okay. The little pieces, I do the same thing with those as I did with the grates. I scrub them with the regular sponge first, and then I use the scouring stick. On one of these here, I'll show you that there's a little spot on there. I think it's this one. Okay, so that little spot that's right there on the corner after I went over it with the sponge did not come off, but after I used the scouring stick, it comes off of there. So I use the scouring stick on the inside of these little metal pieces as well, the silver ones, but I did learn the hard way not to use it on the outside of it, the part that looks like it's more like aluminum, because it did scratch the outside of it. So I would be cautious if you are going to be using it on something. If it's like a shiny silver metal, I probably wouldn't use it on that because I think it will scratch. So last is just to put everything back together and admire your work. Even knowing that this looks so clean, but it's just going to get dirty all over again, it's still very satisfying. We use our stove a lot. We use it at basically breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day. And then the kids sometimes use it for cooking in between as well. And so it does have a tendency to get pretty messy, but it's wonderful when it's done. And I love that I can do it without using harsh chemicals. So I hope that this was helpful for you. If you have any questions, please let me know. And if not, happy cleaning.